Drive was one of the top movies of 2011, and needless to say, plenty of women had naughty thoughts about the main character, the driver, played by Ryan Gosling. But is there something about the driver that we can use to improve our own game? Or is his main appeal to women just his cool Ryan Gosling looks? Now we're going to focus on his character traits in the movie, but let's start with the elephant in the room. Ryan Gosling is obviously a very good looking man, and he's dressed in an iconic way in this movie. Who hasn't secretly thought I'd love to try out one of those scorpion jackets after watching the movie? I'd be just like Ryan Gosling. Now if an average 45-year-old balding IT worker started to wear Ryan Gosling clothing in his day-to-day life, would he get an instant boost in sexual market value? Would women look at him as they would look at the Ryan Gosling character in Drive? Now the answer is clearly no, because that look suits Ryan Gosling, at that time a 31-year-old man, probably at the peak of his looks. So before you reach for your wallet to buy the famous scorpion jacket, think twice. You might just manage to make yourself look very silly. Now this is a key part of the makeup of the driver character that secretly turns women on, whether they admit it or not. He possesses a controlled, savage, life-ending violence just beneath the surface of his cool, quiet character. We first get a glimpse of this under-the-surface violence when he meets a former client in a diner. The driver likes to keep his business quiet and under the lid, so when the former client crosses a line, this happens.
I got this sweet job coming up.
How about this? Shut your mouth, or I'll kick your teeth down your throat and I'll shut it for you.
Now there are numerous other scenes in the movie where the driver has to front up to other men, often dangerous men, who are also unafraid of violence. Now his violence is not uncontrollable, chimp-out violence with no purpose or necessity. He's clearly a man who is in control of his emotions. Rather, he uses violence to achieve an end and in protection of a woman. This is most obvious in the infamous elevator scene, where the driver realizes another assassin has been sent to take him and Irene out. Now I've cut the section where he head stomps the assassin to death. The point is that all women appreciate protection and potential violence from a man against other men. Even uncontrolled violence for no reason can be a turn on for some women, but this scalpel precision, savage type of violence will appeal to all women, even if it's not discussed in polite society. Compare and contrast the controlled violence of the driver and the faux tough guy shtick of Chris Cuomo.
Throw you down these stairs like a punk.
What was the big insult? The guy called him Fredo.
Don't insult me like that.
I didn't insult you.
You called me Fredo. You know my name's not Fredo.
Now we live in a time where microaggressions are part of the cultural zeitgeist in the mighty United States and even get a mention on the presidential stage. The cultural norms around taking offence have shifted in an attempt to push the average man towards a neutered, weak version of himself, where we have to be protected at all costs. Now whilst this might be useful for the professional Twitterati class against the unsuspecting normal male in the West, this shift is disastrous for any man who wants to appeal to women and preserve his core masculinity and self-respect. Women do not respect men who get offended and triggered by normal everyday life. Instead, they respect a man who shrugs it all off, but is ready to actually commit violence if absolutely necessary and there is no other option. The problem is that the modern man is completely unprepared and unused to what violence is like in the real world. How many adult men in the West have never had a street fight in their lives? How many men have run away from a violent encounter? Movies like Drive can help men to connect with their core masculinity if they first acknowledge that violence does have a place, albeit only in the most reserved circumstances. It is unquestionably an attractive trait for any man to have the capacity to unleash controlled violence if necessary. The driver in Drive is an excellent example of what an under-the-surface controlled capacity for violence looks like. Now watch any well-known YouTube channel about dating and attraction and you'll probably come away with the impression that you're a cuck if you look out for women generally, and especially if you're prepared to take care of another man's child. The driver character in Drive thus presents us with an interesting conundrum. How can you have a clearly masculine and lethally violent character like the driver who is also prepared to take care of another man's kid? Part of the answer is because the driver is first and foremost a protector, what some would call a white knight, but it's on his terms and under his conditions. We first see this protective attitude towards Benicio quite early on in the movie, and it's reinforced throughout. But this protective instinct extends even towards Standard too, Benicio's father in the movie. Admittedly, his concern about Standard is necessary to ultimately protect Irene and Benicio, but he's still prepared to put his own life on the line to help others who are weaker and less able than himself. Here's a clip when we see the driver coolly fronting up to another dangerous man and explaining that he offers his protection towards the grown man Standard.
When you get your money, his debt's paid. He's out for good. You never go near his family again. You understand?
So whilst it's inadvisable to become a doormat for women, a character like Driver, who is protective towards those he chooses to invite into his life, can serve to remind us of the best of masculinity.
You mean all the car chases and stuff?
Yeah.
Isn't that dangerous?
It's only part-time. Mostly I work at a garage.
Where?
Reseda Boulevard.
Now admittedly this scene is highly stylized with soft romantic background music, but we can still learn something from the driver's calm energy and preternatural stillness. Two of the very first things a guy needs to learn when he approaches a woman are, number one, slow down, and number two, don't leap to fill silences with guff. To be clear, fast talking can be attractive because it can display an agile and quick-witted mind. But for most guys, the cadence and speed of their speech will noticeably increase when they first chat to a woman that they're really attracted to, especially if they're unused to doing this, and doubly so if it's in the middle of the daytime and there is no alcohol involved. A guy will also leap to fill silences with chatter, which can subcommunicate low value, an absolute killer towards attraction. It's hard to wean yourself off this habit, but if you can use pauses correctly when you're chatting to a woman, they can do a lot to amplify attraction and raise your value in her eyes. Observe how the driver does this throughout the movie. He never jumps to fill in pauses, and he doesn't really engage in idle chit-chat either. He doesn't talk about subjects that don't interest him, a sign of higher value. Now for introverted men who are attracted to the idea of approaching women in a quiet environment with no alcohol or distractions, you can learn a lot from the still demeanour of the driver. Now I think we've established by now that the driver is a strong, masculine man in the movie. We see a sweeter and loving side to his personality when he spends time with Irene and Benicio. Consider this scene. Once again, red pill dating advice or even mainstream dating advice gets it all wrong, especially if you live in the United States. You must act alpha while still not causing offence or, God forbid, triggering anyone with microaggressions. You must be careful to dominate the woman at all times and spin plates endlessly if you want to be a real alpha male. But it's wrong, all wrong. Most men want to love and to let their guard down and be sweet and loving towards women. Now women want this too, but as the driver character exemplifies, it must be coupled with other characteristics and you must never pedestalize women. The truly attractive mix is to love and respect women in equal measure, but just know that they are females, so expect them to act accordingly. There is equally nothing wrong with a bit or even a lot of chivalry. That's not being a white knight, as the red pill part of the internet would have you believe. That's being a man. Now if you enjoyed this analysis, you will probably enjoy my analysis of Maximus Meridius, the Gladiator. Watch it now before it disappears off the screen.